Guys, today we're going to look at food. This video is meant to inspire you to take an assessment of your food preps. If you have food preps, you may be coming to this straight up. It's a pretty basic idea, but even for those that are seasoned and that are hardcore preppers, it's really important to know where you are, where you stand with your food sources. One of the things about Venezuela right now is because of all the turmoil and the civil unrest, food is really it's a commodity that is just depleted. I mean, there is just no food there. A lot of it's controlled by the government, and and that's one of the big problems is if you are dependent on others for your food, where does that leave you? It takes away your freedom. It takes away, your self-reliance. The average person in Venezuela right now has lost 23 pounds over the past year. In fact, they're selling meat that is spoiled because they're having blackouts, and people are buying it knowing that. There's so many things that are just wrong about that. And, there are things you can do to kind of get yourself in good position to be able to get through a really tough situation and possibly just live a lifestyle. Of course, one of the big things that you need to check first is your pantry. I mean, what kind of food do you have? Are you keeping your pantry well stocked? And this is just average everyday cooking. You're not going to the grocery on a daily basis, or even, having things even for long term, for, a week or two. That is an important part to be able to keep that pantry well stocked. Going past that, and this is one of the things I always tell people, basics. Getting started with prepping, getting started in that self-reliance mindset. And canned foods are the best. In fact, really, one of the things about canned food is way beyond their expiration date, they're still good. One of the problems is it'll start tasting like metal a little bit, but if you're starving, that's not a bad option. One thing though to make sure is that you are well-rounded. You might have a bunch of beans and corn and things like that, but do you have some meats, potted meats, different things like that? And these should be things that you would eat, that you could rotate into your regular meals. That's one thing that my wife did, was whenever she'd go to the grocery, she would always pick up a few extra cans of different foods. And it doesn't take long to be able to build up a decent inventory. The other thing that a lot of people do is buy up beans and rice. It's cheap. You can buy it up. It'll store for a good while, but then you can take and put them in Mylar bags, store them, put oxygen absorbers in there, and just kind of store it. You want to make sure, obviously, that it's free from rodents and pests, things like that. But guys, one thing that I always tell people getting started is shoot for 3 months. Try to get 3 months of food put back, but make sure that you're varied in what you have. A Southern prepper, it's been a few years ago, decided he was going to just only eat the food that he had stored for 1 year. And after about a week, he couldn't even eat. I mean, the food, it was the same stuff, the way it was being prepared. He just couldn't eat it. And, and that's when you need it for your strength to be able to do things you need to in an SHTF situation. Now, another big thing is dehydrated foods, whether it's Mountain House, Wise, different meals that you can just add water and you can eat. Of course, campers and people that like to hike and do things, I mean, I've been using those for years. There's a lot of different varied types. There's a lot of systems. You can even buy buckets with these dehydrated foods that are in there for emergencies. Now, you want to buy good quality though. You want to make sure that it's not high in sodium and that it's actually, is going to be good for you. The problem with a lot of that is that it can be expensive. But, having a decent supply of that is excellent to kind of break things up. Also, MREs, and that's a big one. A lot of people store up MREs. They have about a 5-year shelf life typically. I try to keep MREs handy, especially if I want to put that in my bug out bag. It's something you can just open up and eat immediately. But now, one thing that's important too is for your skills. Gardening. Gardening's big. And guys, even if you just have a small garden, you need to be dabbling in it at least to get a knowledge of how to grow things. Waiting until the ball drops is not a good time to start learning how to garden, how to can those foods, just how to eat fresh. Plus, it's just better for you. And then two, one thing that we've had a real problem with is deer and rabbits and squirrels getting into our garden and just decimating it. You need to have these things in place beforehand. Now, a few years ago, we went to a Mormon cannery. The Mormons are big about storing up food and keeping at least 1 year of food on hand at all times. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned. In fact, there's a lot of resources through the Mormon community to be able to help you to store food correctly. The Mormon cannery, sometimes they're all over the country. There's one in every state. There are different regulations and different rules. Sometimes you have to know a Mormon to get into the cannery. Sometimes the canneries are closed to anybody outside of the Mormon faith. The one that we went to in Columbia, South Carolina, at the time was willing to just have us down. We just called ahead, we scheduled a time. You go down and actually can the food yourself. They have these machines, and all these supplies. It's just a great way to get food very inexpensively. Now, this is more of your beans and rice and salt, and dried fruits, and you name it. There's a ton of different things that you can get. But we bought a large supply of food it's been about 10 years ago, or about 8 years ago. It has a 30-year shelf life. So we've still got 20 good years of that food, and we've got it stored up. It's just a way to just go, you know what? I've got this stored. If something happens, we can get in it. But knowing how to prepare those foods, having spices and things like that that'll complement is an important factor. So I will have that video linked right here just for you to go and look. Again, it is one of the older videos that we did. But it is an excellent way to really get a jump start on your food preps. And of course, fishing. Many of you are fishermen or you fished over the years, but making sure that you have your tackle, that you have fishing rods, and then taking them out, going out and fishing, and knowing how to clean fish, knowing how to process and store, to freeze it or to dry it out or whatever. But fishing is important. Hunting, right there behind it. Having the ammunition, having your rifles, your shotguns, your .22 rifle, whatever it is, what you're wanting to hunt, but also getting out and hunting and learning how to, clean those animals, to process it, not just from a butcher, but also for you to be able to do it. You don't want to, you're desperate, you need food, and then you're learning how to, clean a deer. That is a big process. And it's something that you need to maybe get together with some experienced hunters, let them take you out and learn. But it's something that, again, you need to have these things set aside if you're not already a hunter or if you haven't hunted in years, to have these skills. Another thing is trapping. Now, trapping is different, and having the tools or having the knowledge to be able to set up traps. And then once you harvest these animals, to be able to, again, clean them and use them. Also, of course, wild edibles. And that's a toughie. You need to know, some basic things about wild edibles. It would really be best to have someone that knows what they're doing when you're going and learning to do these things, especially when it comes to mushrooms. You want to be careful because there are mushrooms that are deadly poisonous. There are mushrooms that'll get you high. And, you need to know what is going to be good. And really, there are different clubs that go out and harvest wild edibles. There are local clubs. There are ways to get involved in those kind of things. But that, to me, is one thing that I've had to learn over the past few years, and I'm still learning. Now, guys, when it comes to preparing food, whether it's canning, which is huge, whether it's dehydration, but one big thing is being able to dry meats out. There's, for years, especially before there was refrigeration, people dried their meats, they hung them up. Experimenting with that is really important to know. It's a skill that's really lost. And there's a lot of information out there about these different things, and, it's easy to look them up. But you can follow these, step by step. But learning how to take that food and process it. Another thing is, if you're out on the trail, having the means to be able to cook your food. And there's a lot of different things that you can do, whether it's just knowledge of using existing things that are around you in nature, or even like mounts that you can set up to hang pots, having the pots to be able to cook the food, having the skillets, your spatulas, your things like that, to where you can actually cook food and enjoy it while you're out. So the big takeaway here is to find out what you have, take an assessment, decide what you're weak in, and start focusing on those areas. You need to be self-reliant. You need to be able to take care of those things. These are basic survival needs, guys, that we have lost. We have lost the skills to be able to do this. And so this is super important for everyone, whether you're just beginning or whether you're a seasoned prepper. Look through your skills, hone the ones that you don't know, and you'll be better prepared. And guys, it's like freedom. When you know where you are and you have these skills in place, makes things a lot better. Today we're going to talk, citizen is losing, hungry, being dependent. Okay. We will
have so much winning if I get elected that you may get bored with winning.